And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I'm your host, Demo, and this is the top 10 cards from Commander 2021. And if you watched my 10 cards from Commander 2021 that you shouldn't be playing video already, you probably already know that I'm not super impressed with this set at all. This list actually was supposed to be the top 20 cards from Commander 2021, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get to 20. Honestly, I could not get to 20 cards that I am giving my personal seal of approval to, that I think people should be putting in their decks, which is really sad for a Commander set. Strixhaven, no problem getting to 20. No problem. I probably could have made a top 30 list for Strixhaven. Strixhaven was way better for Commander than Commander 2021, which, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know why. There's clearly so many cards in Strixhaven that were made specifically for Commander, and I guess because the sets were coming out at the same time, I guess they really didn't care which one went where. Because the themes are a lot of the same, I'm not sure why they decided on which ones went in which set. There's just so much crossover. The lines are completely blurred. They're already printing cards, in every set now, specifically for Commander. It's really kind of getting out of hand, which is weird to say for someone who plays only Commander now. It's sort of weird for me to complain about that, but I just don't understand, what's the long-term goal here? You're just trying to get every Magic player to play Commander and nothing else? For Wizards of the Coast, I'm just wondering, if you're a fly on the wall in one of their meetings, I'm just wondering, what's their long-term game plan here? I really don't know. I just think, if I was a Standard player or Modern, I probably wouldn't be too impressed, but anyway, I digress. So I do have a couple honorable mentions. Ink Shield, 3 white, black, instant. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to you this turn. For each 1 damage prevented this way, create a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token flying. I think this is a pretty good card. I like this kind of stuff, right? I'm the guy who puts Settle the Wreckage in my deck, and I put Comeuppance in my deck. Aether Spouts is a favorite of mine. I love cards like that. I always have those, basically those anti-Craterhoof Behemoth cards. This is prevent all combat damage and only dealt to you, so that's important, and you get a 2/1 Inkling token with flying for each 1 damage prevented. So this can just be completely reverse the outcome of the game, right? Again, Craterhoof Behemoth comes down, your opponent's going to smack you for 50 or something. You prevent all that damage, and now you get 50 2/1 white and black Inkling creature tokens. Pretty darn good. I think this is definitely going to see some play, or at least it should. Another honorable mention, Scholarship Sponsor. 3 and a white. Human Advisor 3/3. When Scholarship Sponsor enters the battlefield, each player who controls fewer lands than the player who controls the most lands searches their library for a number of basic land cards less than or equal to the difference, puts those cards onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffles. I put this as an honorable mention. It definitely needs a mention because technically this is the best white ramp card in the game now, because you're going to search for a number of basic lands equal to the difference. So if you have 5 lands and your opponent has 10, you go get 5 basic lands out of your deck and put them directly into play, right? You don't put some in your hand or anything. You put them all into play, which is phenomenal. That's absolutely fantastic. The only problem is it does it for each player, right? Your other 2 opponents get to also do this. So basically what this, the effect is incredibly powerful, right? What this does is this makes everyone have the same amount of lands, assuming they have enough basic lands in their deck. I also like it for that reason, because it's kind of going to punish the player who's playing the 5-color deck because they're not going to have a lot of basic lands. So I do really like this card, and it is, technically the best ramp card. Geez, maybe it's the best ramp card. Is there another card that can go get you 20 lands out of your deck and put them into play? This could do that. Maybe there are a couple in green. So it really is fantastic at ramping. The only problem is that sort of hug effect that I don't love about it. So that's why I put it as an honorable mention. But coming in at number 10, Author of Shadows, 4 and a black, Shade Warlock 3/3. When Author of Shadows enters the battlefield, exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. Choose a non-land card exiled this way. You may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell. They really need a keyword for that. Seriously, we're seeing that ability so much lately because people really like that in Commander, right? You may exile your opponent's card and spend mana of any color to spend, they really need a keyword for that. I think it's quite the mouthful. I really like this card. This is a card that you can put in any deck rather than leaning towards the big splashy, hey, it might be good, but it might not be. Like, you look at my 10 cards that I think you should avoid playing, there's a lot of cards on there that could be really good, but also could be duds. I like to lean more towards the cards that are always going to be good. This card's always going to be good. Exiling graveyards, I love that. I say it all the time, you need graveyard hate in your decks. This only exiles your opponent's graveyards, so you can play this in a graveyard deck and it won't hurt you at all. So already I like it. And then on top of that, you get to take something that was in your opponent's graveyard and then cast it at any point in the game, right? If your Author of Shadows gets removed, doesn't matter. For the rest of the game, just like with a Praetor's Grasp, you just get to cast that card whenever you feel like it. Rather than a Praetor's Grasp where you search through your opponent's library and you don't know what you're going to get, you actually know what you're going to get with this, right? It comes into play. You can wait, right? You can wait until there's something in your opponent's graveyards that you really, really want, and then you can cast it and you're guaranteed to get that thing, right? So I really like this card a lot. I don't know if there's a specific deck you put it in, but it can go just in every deck, I think. Coming in at number 9, Perplexing Test. 3 blue, instant. Choose one. Return all creature tokens to their owner's hands. Return all non-token creatures to their owner's hands. This is essentially evacuation, a better evacuation. I mean, it can be worse, right? Maybe you do have some opponents with creature tokens and some that don't have creature tokens, and you want to return all, you want to bounce them all. So in that situation, evacuation is better because it's going to hit everything. But I really like modal cards, and I really like that you can build, like, it fits certain strategies better. My Tishana deck, this is absolutely perfect, and I have evacuation in a couple of my decks. I like that card. The fact that it's instant speed makes it really fantastic. And this is going to replace it. This is going to go in there instead because I actually am making tokens of my creatures in that deck, right? It's an ETB deck. I have cards like Cackling Counterpart. I make a token copy of my Eternal Witness. It comes into play, right? And the reason why I have evacuation is because I want to bounce my creatures to my hand because I'm going to replay them and get that ETB again. So this fits perfectly because I can choose all non-token creatures to be returned to their hand. Returning token creatures to your hand does nothing, right? Because they just disappear. So I get to keep my token creatures and I return all the other ones to my hand, which I can then reuse. Versatile, it's an answer. I always love answers, especially in a color like blue that has trouble maybe dealing with creatures. I mean, maybe blue doesn't have trouble dealing with creatures anymore. Maybe I should stop saying that. It actually deals with creatures pretty good. But either way, I think this card is going to see a lot of play in the format. Coming in at number 8, Cursed Mirror. 2 and a red artifact. Add 1 red mana. As Cursed Mirror enters the battlefield, you may have it become a copy of any creature on the battlefield until end of turn, except it has haste. I really like this card. I know people will say, it's not 3 mana rock, that's terrible. But that's the bonus. That you don't think of this as a mana rock. Think of this as a heat shimmer, right? This is a heat shimmer. And I think heat shimmer is a great spell, to be quite honest. I have it in my Dragon Lord Atarka deck. This card fits in that deck as well perfectly. So I'll be definitely putting it in that deck. It's copying any creature on the battlefield. And again, this is not, I'm going to play this on turn 3. And because I need a mana rock, I wouldn't play it like that. I would play it like a heat shimmer, and my opponent's got a Blightsteel Colossus, and I throw this in play and I copy it and I kill one of my opponents, or my opponent's got an Eternal Witness in play and this comes into play, and who cares that it has haste? I'm not going to attack with it. Basically, my Cursed Mirror becomes an Eternal Witness. I get something out of my graveyard, and then at the end of the turn, it turns into a mana rock. I just think that's so versatile. Again, I like cards that are versatile. There's lots of different things you can do with them. They're never going to be a dead draw, right? It's not going to be like, again, the cards on my other list, the cards you shouldn't be playing. The cards on this list are cards that you're just never, they're never going to sit in your hand and you just go, oh, well, I can't use that. You're always going to be able to use this, right? You can use it on your creatures, right? You can copy your creatures, you can copy your opponent's creatures. And then at the end of the day, it turns into a mana rock. I mean, I just think it's fantastic. Next up, Marshland Bloodcaster. 4 and a black vampire warlock. Man, there are so many warlocks in Magic now. There's just so many. I like almost every card, it seems like, in Strixhaven and Commander 2021 is a warlock. 3/5 flyer, 1 and a black tap. Rather than pay the mana cost of the next spell you cast this turn, you may pay life equal to the spell's mana value. I put this where I did. I sort of put it in the middle because obviously it can be really good. But again, like I just talked about, I like cards that are always going to be good no matter what, rather than a card that can be, I can cast an Expropriate for free, and not for free, right? It's still 2 mana and you do have to pay the life. I mean, obviously the life isn't a big deal if you're just going to win the game, right? It's definitely good. No question. I put it where I put it though, because I think, okay, I play 5 mana. Now I got to wait a whole nother turn before I can use it. And this is going to be a card that, I mean, I guarantee you play this and everyone's going to want to get it off the table because they don't know what crazy busted thing is coming, right? So you have to be expecting that. It's definitely a great card with a really powerful ability. I mean, everyone loves Bolas's Citadel, right? So this is a similar effect. I think probably you get one use of this, maybe. I think it's highly unlikely you're going to get more than one unless your opponents don't know to put removal in their decks. Coming in at number 6. Theoretical Duplication. 2 and a blue instant. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control this turn, create a token that's a copy of that creature. I just really love cards like this, right? Again, this is sort of like Mystic Reflection from Kaldheim. This is like Release to the Wind, a card that I really love a lot. Just really versatile. There's a lot of different ways you can use it. It's always going to be good. It's always going to be usable. Again, it's never just going to be a dead card sitting in your hand unless your opponents aren't playing creatures, right? That's about the only scenario where this thing becomes bad. You can just copy your opponent's creature essentially, right? So anything they cast, you can get a copy of. But more than that, though, this is until the end of turn, right? So whenever a creature enters the battlefield, this turn, you create a token. So this can be more than one, right? This can be a bunch of creatures. If your opponent casts a Tooth and Nail, you can respond and cast Theoretical Duplication, and whatever they get, you get a copy of, right? Both creatures you get a copy of. I don't think this card is busted or anything like that. I just think it's really versatile. There's always going to be a lot of opportunities to use it. It's just a fun card, you know, and also it's just very unique. I don't think there's any other card like this in the game, and I like mentioning cards like that. Coming in at number 5, Stinging Study. 4 and a black. You draw cards and you lose X life, where X is the mana value of a commander you own on the battlefield or in the command zone. So yeah, this is, I think, probably going to be an auto-include for a lot of people. Obviously, the mana value, right, of your commander is going to matter. I think if your commander is like a 3 or a 4 CMC, I mean, even 4 CMC, I think this is worth it. I mean, this is an instant. That, to me, that really bumped it high up the list for me. 5 mana instant speed. I draw 4 cards, lose 4 life. That's pretty darn good. The wording here, you know, mana value of a commander you own on the battlefield or in the command zone. So basically, either way, as long as it's on the battlefield or the command zone and not in your hand or in the graveyard, you know, I guess there's a fringe scenario where you don't draw cards off of this. It can also be with partner commanders as well. So now there's a reason to play Brianlin, everybody, right? There's a lot of spells like Ambitious Cost. I just don't think that's good. A lot of people play cards like that, and they reprinted that in this set even, and I think a lot of people use it. I don't think it's very good. This is way better than any of those kind of cards, to be quite honest. So I definitely think it's going to see a lot of play. Next up, Komancers Map. 2 and a white. Artifact. When a Komancers Map enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 basic playing cards. Reveal them and put them in your hand, then shuffle. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, if that player controls more lands than you may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. So again, this is, you know, I mean, they're just trying so hard to make white draw cards and ramp. I mean, it's kind of getting at like enough, guys, okay? The only 2 white cards that I'm talking about here today are ramp cards. Like, enough. Can we stop with the, like, white needs to ramp, white needs to draw? Like, okay, we got it. Like, let's do something a little more interesting. I think we have enough of this now. That being said, you know, when I first saw this card, I thought, okay, it's all right. You get 2 land. It's kind of doing the same thing that most white ramp, you know, quote unquote cards do. But really it's not. It's a lot better than that. Okay, so first of all, it's not a spell, it's a permanent, right? It's an artifact. So already it's like, okay, I can reuse this. I can blink it and use the effect again if I'm in a Brago deck. I can, you know, put this in my Gerard deck where I use my Goblin Welder and I swap it out and get it back and get more lands out of my deck. I assume this is in the Oscar Precon deck, right? Because this is an auto-include in that deck where you can sacrifice it and then get 2 copies back and go get more lands. So it's fantastic in that deck. Like, worst case scenario, right? Let's play the worst case scenario here. The worst case scenario is I pay 3 mana, I get 2 plains cards, then I put them in my hand, and then let's pretend every single one of my opponents has less or equal lands than me, so I don't get to use that second ability at all. This is still 3 mana. I get 2 lands out of my deck. That's pretty good. But the best case scenario is I just paid 3 mana and I get 2 lands into play untapped, which is fantastic. That's better than what green can do. 3 mana, I go get 2 planes out of my library, and then my opponent plays a fetch land, cracks it, and then, you know, that's a land entering the battlefield, and then he fetches something, and that's another land entering the battlefield, and I just put those 2 lands I got directly into play untapped. Pretty damn good. 3 mana, put 2 lands into play untapped is obviously fantastic. And the fact that it's an artifact and you can sort of get into some shenanigans there where you're reusing it. I really like this card. I think it's probably going to go in all my mono white decks. It's going to go in a couple of my Boros decks as well. Definitely a card I think we'll be seeing in the format. But that's it. Enough with the ramp. Okay, Wizards of the Coast, like, let's move on with white and do something different. Coming in at number 3, Sly Instigator. 3 and a blue human wizard, 2/4. 1 blue mana and tap. Until your next turn, target creature an opponent controls can't be blocked. Goad that creature. This is a really powerful ability. Again, it's a card that you're always going to find a use for it, okay? The downside to this card, all right, I'll talk about the downside first. The downside to this card is I'm screwing with my opponents, and people don't like that. You know, people don't like having their creatures goaded. They really don't. They don't like being told what to do, right? And essentially that's what goading is. Goading is telling your opponents, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's sort of, in a way, almost controlling their turn, sort of, which people really hate. I mean, I know I don't like it. I had a Marisi, Breaker of the Coil deck briefly, and man, I took it apart because every game I was the arch enemy because people were like, I don't want my creatures being goaded all the time, so we're all gonna kill you first, right? That's definitely the downside of this card. However, the upside is so huge that I think, you know, it's still worth it. Until your next turn, target creature an opponent controls can't be blocked. Goad that creature. Now we're going to look at the upside. The upside is, first of all, you can use it in a political way, right? You can use this in a political way. If you want to do a politics deck, this is a great fit in a politics deck. If you just want to protect yourself from your opponent's best creature, this is great, right? Your opponent's got a Blightsteel Colossus. You just 1 mana, and now he can't attack you with it. But the best upside of this is I kill my other 2 opponents with my opponent's creature. My opponent's got a Blightsteel Colossus, and I know I'm going to the extreme example here, but this is an example. My opponent has a Blightsteel Colossus. He kills one of my other opponents with it, and then he kills the other opponent with it the next turn. I mean, that's incredible, right? That is really powerful. It's unblockable. You're making their creature so that it can't be blocked. The upside to this card is huge. I think the downside is minimal, other than I'm annoying my opponents and they're not going to like that. That's basically the downside to this card. The upside to this card is it can even just win you the game, and it's never going to be unusable, right? It's always going to be a card that you're going to find use for, even if you're just using it to protect yourself. Coming in at number 2, Surge to Victory. 4 red sorcery. Exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. Creatures you control get +X/+O until end of turn, where X is that card's mana value. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player this turn, copy the exiled card. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. This is a card I had to read over a few times because I was like, is it really doing what I think it's doing? Just like a Freet Flame Painter. That was the one where I was like, oh wait, you get to cast it for free? And it has double strike, so you get to cast 2 things for free from your graveyard? That's incredible. There's 2 ways to use this card. And I'm sure already people are thinking of ridiculously busted scenarios that they can do with this card. I mean, 6 mana is a lot. It's a 6 mana sorcery, okay? And you're probably thinking I play this in an aggro deck, and absolutely this is going to go in every Krenko deck, I would imagine. Every Zada deck for sure, right? Because you have lots of those instants and sorceries, the cantrip type stuff. Even if you're not playing an aggro deck, though, this can be really, really good, right? Creatures you control get +X/+O. Okay, that to me, that's sort of an added bonus that you really don't need. You can just do this like I exile a Blasphemous Act from my graveyard and all my creatures get +9/+O, right? And just kill my opponent. And it's a May, you don't have to cast the Blasphemous Act, right? So you can just use it as a boost effect, like an overrun type effect where you just kill your opponents. I think, though, the best way to use this is I exile a Swords to Plowshares from my graveyard. All my creatures get +X/+O, so they only get +1/+O. That's not great. But now every single time, right, this is each instance, whenever a creature you control deals combat to its player this turn, copy the exiled card, right? So I'm going to connect with 5 creatures, let's say. I get to cast 5 Swords to Plowshares. So I get to exile 5 of my opponent's creatures. That's really, really good. This can completely turn a game over. This can be, I go from being not very good. I have 5 Goblin tokens in play, and I'm completely taken over the game, right? You can just straight up kill one of your opponents with this if you exile something expensive. You can also copy a spell 5, 6, 10 times with this and completely take over a game. You can draw a ton of cards. If it's a cantrip or something, you can draw a ton of cards with this. Again, this is a card that is never going to be bad. You're always going to find a use for it. It works in so many different strategies. Really fantastic. And coming in at number 1, Guardian Augmenter. 2 and a green. Troll Wizard 2/2. It's got flash. That makes every card better. Commander creatures you control get +2/+2. Commander creatures you control have hexproof. They have a white version of this, Bastion Protector, and they have a red version. I won't say version, but similar, right? The red one is Bloodsworn Steward, I think. And I see those cards. I thought, why didn't they do a cycle of these? Like, I thought maybe they would do one for each, like your commander gets these bonuses. And now they have the green one. So now there's a white, red, and green one. I don't think there's a black or a blue one, though. So I don't know if they're going to complete the cycle or not. This is the best of the bunch. Giving your commander +2/+2 and hexproof is fantastic. The fact that it has flash is even better because now you can make your opponent waste their removal spell. For me, I put cards high on this list that I think just go in every deck. I don't see any reason not to put this in every deck that has green. You know, if you care about your commander, first of all, the mono green decks, pretty much every mono green deck really cares about their commander. And a lot of them, I want my commander to be bigger, so that helps too. I think about my Questing Beast deck. This is an absolute auto-include in that deck. It's going in for sure because it's going to make my commander bigger and give it even more keyword abilities and harder to kill. Who doesn't want to give their commander hexproof? You don't even have to flash this in response, right? Just like I say about with Steely Resolve, you can just play this ahead of time. You put Guardian Augmenter into play because you're going to cast your commander the next turn and you don't want it to get removed right away before you can use its ability, whatever its ability might be. I mean, this card isn't crazy super powerful. The reason why I have it at number 1 is because I think, why wouldn't you put this in your deck? As long as you care about your commander. The only stipulation here is I want my commander to stay on the battlefield. That's it. And then the added bonus is the flash. The added bonus is it gives my commander +2/+2 if I actually want to be attacking with it, maybe, right? Lots of upside, 0 downside. Like even if I'm playing an Atraxa deck, right? That's a 4-color deck that maybe you're going to find trouble finding room for a card like this, but still, a 6/6 Atraxa, first of all, seems really, really good. And also, people are always going to want to remove it. So, I just think there's so many decks that this goes in. Really fantastic. I'll just say overall on this list, the color distribution, because people are always interested in what colors did the best. Green, even though green had my number 1 pick, that was the only card on the list. There actually wasn't a lot of fantastic green cards. Red only had 2, even though I think red did fare really well in Commander 2021. It only had 1 card on my bad list, and it really wasn't that bad, really. It's okay. Black had 4 on this list. I think black made out really well. Blue had 3, and white had 3. Although the white cards, one was an honorable mention. Both of them were doing essentially the same thing, which was ramping. And the other one, which was also an honorable mention, Ink Shield, is a multicolored card. So I counted that as white and black. So white, probably, I don't know if they made out the worst, but they didn't make out great. Overall, the set, like I said, I'm not super thrilled with it. There is definitely some really good cards, definitely some cards I'm going to put in my deck, no question. But like I said in, my other video of the cards you shouldn't be playing, this is a commander set. I should have no problem doing a top 20 for a commander set, I think. These are cards that Wizards of the Coast wants us to be buying and putting in our commander decks, right? And with the competition for, finding room in your decks, I mean, maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just getting increasingly difficult to put cards in your deck because they for a long time they were ramping up the power level for commander cards, and now maybe they're realizing that the power creep is getting out of hand and they're maybe toning it back down. So maybe that's part of it. I shouldn't be upset that the power level for these cards is a lot lower than maybe a set that came out a year ago. For me, it's I want an interesting card, right? I want an interesting card like theoretical duplication, right? The power level there isn't high. It's interesting. You can do a lot of things with it, right? Sly Instigator, right? That the power level isn't extremely high there, but that's a really interesting card that I can do lots of stuff with. I'll just talk about the reprints because the most of the set is reprints because that I think they also sort of dropped the ball on there as well. I see cards like Oblation. This used to be a really popular card in the format. Nobody plays it anymore, I don't think. Stalking Leonin, you know, cards that have already been printed in Commander sets that don't really see any play. Why are we reprinting them again in Commander sets? Aether Gale, you know, like who plays that? Does anyone? I've never seen anyone cast that in a Commander game, I don't think. You know, so there's a lot of really questionable reprints and a lot of things that I think they miss. Like the one card that I really wanted to see them reprint is Parallel Lives. I talked about this in my Adrix and Nev deck. That's a really expensive card. It's never been reprinted. And because of all the tokens, there's just a really huge token theme in Strixhaven and Commander 2021. And I thought this was a perfect opportunity for them to reprint that card in this set. And it, you know, it's a card that everyone's going to want. And so it's going to increase the chances that people, you know, go and buy these cards from this set. So big miss there. Overall, you know, if I was to give Commander 2021 a rating, I would say it's about a 6, maybe, you know, like as compared to Strixhaven, right? Strixhaven to me is like an 8. Really good. Lots of great Commander cards in there. Way better than Commander 2021. So, you know, I just think there's just a lot of really big misses for me in this set. So overall, not fantastic. But that is it for today. That is my top 10 cards from Commander 2021. Thanks for tuning in.